Well, I suppose we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you for filling up the room there at Lone Tree. We appreciate that. Do we have any guests in the room at Lone Tree there?
Yes.
All right, well, if you would, one at a time, just tell us who you are, what kind of photography you do, perhaps how you found the club, and maybe even what you might expect out of a wonderful camera club like ours.
First guest.
My name's Jordan. My husband told me about it, so I am along for the ride. Mostly just, from our travels, pictures that we like to take, so travel photos and food, honestly.
Yeah, my name is Kevin, my colleague, and I heard about the club through Denver Street Photography Facebook. So whoever cross-linked that, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I would describe my photography as like the Cheesecake Factory of photography. I do a lot of little everything, but nothing fantastic. So I'd love to learn a little more on
64 pages.
yeah, it's just like whatever I'm feeling for the day. So yeah, looking forward to learning more.
Awesome.
Right.
Great to have you.
It's my second time here. I actually found the group last fall, but it was just right before they closed the building down. So I was like, well, it's really never until you can be back in here again. So yeah.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
So
John. Okay.
Oh, yeah, John, you were with us for the program meeting 2 weeks ago.
yes, yeah, very good.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you all. Appreciate
Carl,
you.
we have one more.
Oh,
One
sorry.
more. That's okay. My name is Sandy, and I had heard about the group a while ago, and then I had a message with Joy as we were back and forth, whichever group you had posted about. I love everything from macro to wildlife, so I'm always out and about, anything in between.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you all, and thank you all for coming out to see us tonight. And I'm glad to hear that Joy's promotions on social media are helping us. We got somebody from the Denver group. Looking here at Zoom, I see we've got Jade. Would you care to unmute and answer the same kind of questions, how you found us and what photography you do and things like that?
Yeah, hi. My name is Jade. I found you guys through just a quick little Google search. I also go to Mike's Camera a lot and happen to see the posters around. But yeah, I enjoy a lot of wildlife photography. I've started doing some film photography. Yeah, mostly whatever is just going on in life. Yeah.
Very nice. And Erin?
Hi, I was with you guys last week, I guess 2 weeks ago for the
Yeah.
program meeting and really enjoyed that. Just kind of getting an idea of what a competition looks like, definitely planning to join. I've been shooting for 6 or 7 years, but my interests are super broad and I haven't really had a chance to like progress or focus in on any one particular subject. I've enjoyed landscape, street photography, architecture, macro, travel photography, just kind of a real broad scape. I also have a series of like neon signs that I play around with every once in a while. I'm really interested in the mentorship aspect of the clubs because I'm looking to grow my skills. So thank you for the invite. I found the club just with a quick Google, was looking for new opportunities to learn in the new year.
Well, fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us again. And it sounds like everything that you mentioned is pretty much what our topics are for competitions this year. So you may have a bunch of images in your archive already to get up for our competitions here. But,
Yeah, it sounds like a good fit.
yes, we're glad to have you. And yeah, I know a lot of people when they first start out, you got to try all kinds of different things to find what you really like. So it's nice that you're going and exploring different genres.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us this evening, guests and members alike. Just a few little announcements. renewing members for the club. Thank you to the 35 people who have already paid for this year. We just need 20 more of you to jump in on the bandwagon, and we'll be up to next year's numbers, or last year's numbers. We do, for renewing members, you have to be paid by February 12th, by the first meeting in February, in order to continue competing in competitions for the year and in order to maintain all your benefits here in the club. Speaking of benefits of the club, next week is our fifth Wednesday, one of our fifth Wednesdays for the year. And we're going to do a little session on the benefits of membership. I'd encourage everybody, whether you're a member or not, to attend that meeting. That would be a good overview, because a lot of times people forget about it's not just programs and competitions. We have lots of other things like the mentorship that Aaron mentioned. And then on our program meeting February 12th, we're going to be welcoming Butch Mizuka, who is doing a program on Beyond the Rule of Thirds, 33 hacks to improve your scores in photo club competitions. Butch is a past member of the club. He was a member for quite a number of years. And he did give a presentation a couple of years ago on going on an African safari, which he has done a number of times. And it was an excellent program. So I'm kind of looking forward to this one too. Butch is a great guy and a great photographer. So this evening, our competition subject is open, which is just like it sounds. You can shoot anything, submit anything, any genre, any type. We don't put any extra qualifications on it. So we do have about 45 images to go through this evening. So hopefully we won't be too late. And our judge this evening is Cheryl Opperman. Cheryl's been with us a couple of times before as a judge, and also did a presentation a couple of years ago on shooting sandhill cranes, which was an excellent program. And let me just read a bit of a bio here. Cheryl's a nationally acclaimed nature photographer who's traveled to every continent in the world, capturing spectacular images of nature, wildlife, and indigenous cultures. Widely published, her photographs have appeared in print, on the web, on television, and in solo and group exhibits, resulting in a list of clients or credits, which include the American Humane Association, Overseas Adventure Travel, the Denver Post, National Geographic Society, and the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. Cheryl's aesthetic compositions, artistic use of light, and exquisite detail have been honored with several prestigious awards from organizations including the Earth Day Network, Nature's Best Photography, International Photography Awards, and the National Wildlife Federation. She was also featured as a leading female nature photographer by Outdoor Photographer magazine, and has appeared on on-camera interviews by 9 News Denver, The Luminous Landscape, and Smithsonian Earth. Using the power of photography to inspire interest in the environment and other cultures, she has presented keynote addresses or classes on various topics to schools, camera clubs, the Intermountain Regional Headquarters of the National Park Service, the Crane Trust, Denver Audubon, the Colorado Environmental Film Festival, and North American Nature Photography Association. Cheryl's a 1992 honors graduate of Brooks Institute of Photography, holding a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Industrial Scientific Photography. Welcome, Cheryl. Welcome back, actually. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? Oh, we can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so good. Very good. Well, I thought I might share just a little bit about some of my upcoming workshops before we start the competition, if that works for you.
That'll work.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back. It's a great club. I enjoy seeing all of you, and then seeing some new faces too. So welcome. If you do want more information about my workshops, the best two ways are going to be my website, which is just CherylOpperman.com. And I'm starting a new page on Patreon. You can join Patreon for free. There will be paid tiers eventually, but it's a great way to make sure my messages get through to people. So I will be posting all of my new trips on Patreon first, and I'll have some exclusive opportunities as well. So please go over there and just look for the free slot. There's a way to sign up for free. So, you know, Patreon. PATREON and then .com and then just / my name, Cheryl Opperman. And if you have any questions, you can email me and I'll be glad to send you a link. But I've got lots of exciting workshops coming up. Of course, I always do the Sandhill Cranes in March. We have just a few spaces left. So if you're interested in that for this year, let me know. But it's always good to get on the wait list for next year as well. I do things that are not on my website right now. I do prairie chickens usually in April, some at the end of March and in April, but I can only take 3 people at a time. So I usually don't post those on the website because I have so few slots. But if you're interested, let me know. Just feel free to email me. I might take a small group up to Alaska for auroras in early April. So again, email me on that. On my website, you'll find I've got a great Texas bird workshop coming up in May. It's a new workshop for me, but you know, if you want more variety and maybe what we get at the Crane Trust, it's a great way to come and learn more about photography. And we're working from blinds, so the birds are going to be close. That's a great opportunity. I have a Costa Rica trip that's not on the website in May. I have 3 people who want to go to Iceland this year. I'm going to definitely do an Iceland trip next year, but if you're interested in Iceland for this year, please let me know because then I could pair you with those other people. I do Alaska bears. I do Tanzania, Africa pretty much every September usually. And I've got a new trip coming in November this year that'll be on the website soon to Australia. So it's a great itinerary. I spent 3 months in Australia after I graduated from Brooks and it's fabulous. So looking forward to that. And then of course, there are lots of other places I go. So feel free to reach out if you have an idea. And you know, I'm always glad to take phone calls too. Feel free to call me. All my information's on my website. So, and thanks for having me. Yeah.
You mentioned that you don't have, it has 3 people.
Iceland.
Prairie chicken.
Oh, prairie chickens. Prairie chickens. Yes. We have a great situation with the prairie chickens too, because the blind, it's really well built. It's not a pop-up. We've got a short grass lex, so you don't have little grasses getting in the way of prairie chickens. And there's even a bathroom. It's not fancy, but there is a bathroom in the blind because that prevents a lot of people going to photograph prairie chickens because they're worried they can't wait that long because you have to wait till the prairie chickens leave. So we do have a bathroom as well. So if you're interested, they're really fun to photograph. I mean, they jump so fast. It's like Christmas every time you take pictures because you can't even see the action with the naked eye. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah, just let me, I forgot to mention some of the new members that we have in our club. John Helfrich, who's here on Zoom. John joined us in December of last year. And then recently, we also added Jim Cavello and Stuart Little, who were at our program meeting a couple weeks ago. And apparently we're impressed enough to say, yeah, I think I'll join this gang. So thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you having you here. So yes, thumbs up, Stuart. So the way that the competition works is that Bob will be showing the images. I will announce the title, then Cheryl will go to you for your commentary and critique on it. Tell us about the image, give it a score. We'll go through them like that. When we hit about 6 or 8 of them that get 9s or 10s, we'll pause for a bit, review those and talk to the makers of the images, get their feedback on how they created the images, etc. So Bob, if you're ready, let's go.
Ready.
So our first image is heat is hard on saguaros.
Great. Okay. And you can still hear me, correct?
Yes, we can.
I just lost my notes though. First of all, just keep in mind that, all of the comments are meant to help you. So please don't take anything too personally and don't pay attention too much to the score. It's just, this is just a great way to learn. If you don't have somebody who can, give you some direction, you're just not going to be able to advance. So, in this particular image, what I always tell people is identify your subject. So it's pretty clear that the cactus is your subject. And then everything else in the picture should should help support it. So, you know, one of the first things I noticed about this image is the lighting is really not the best. So we want to get out to photograph, you know, early in the morning or late in the afternoon. Those are going to be our best times to photograph. And we want to have good light on our subject, because light on the subject is going to help draw our eye to the subject, and then like the mountain behind will complement it. So in this one, the subject is sort of shadowed and the mountain's a little more prominent. So, and you're also very centered. So I think there are a lot of things you can work on here, but you know, you've got nice color. There are nice shapes in this cactus, so maybe getting closer to it. And experimenting with different angles, getting low, maybe using the sky as your background. There are a lot of things you could do, but this one I'm going to give a 6.
Chlorophyll highway.
So diagonals work really well in imagery. So, you know, if you're doing something more abstract like this and you have lines and you can put them at a diagonal, it's very pleasing compositionally. So I think that's working well. You know, I'd like to see a little bit more maybe detail in the shadows. It's a little bit on the contrasty side, which you do want contrast in an image like this, but I'd like to see a little more detail, especially at the top in those darker areas. You know, I did look at all of the images on my computer at home, just so you know, and it did look very sharp. So technically all of those things are working really well. I'm just not sure, you know, how impactful this is. This would make a great background for something, but as just a subject itself, you know, technically I think you did really well, but I think you could maybe make it a little more interesting by trying a little different angle on it, maybe, you know, showing more depth by making part of it bigger, leading you into the image more. It's very flat the way it is. So try some of those things, but I'm going to give it an 8.
London Olympics Aquatic Center.
So architectural photography is something I did when I first got out of school to make a living. So now I do mostly wildlife, and I really enjoy that, but architecture is wonderful. And you did a very good job on keeping your lines straight on the buildings in the background. I actually pulled lines over in Photoshop to check how straight they are, and they're just perfectly straight. So that's great, keeping that perspective. I really like how the shape of the foreground building leads you into the frame. You know, I think it's a very nice image. It's sharp, it's well executed. I'm going to give it a 10.
Storms are coming, better get moving.
This image, I really like the contrast between the blue in the back and the, you know, more yellow tones of the sand. I think that's really works very, very well. Now, when I did go and zoom in on this, and just keep in mind even the files that I get are still not high res enough to judge really accurately things like sharpness, but it looked like there might be a few little artifacts or some retouching areas that I could see in this. So, but it's hard to tell because it's very pixelated, even with the files they send me. So I'm not going to judge too harshly on that because I can't tell for sure what's going on. But I like it compositionally. There are actually a few little people in the image, which you probably can't see, but they give it a good sense of scale. The only thing I think I would have done differently is I don't think you need quite so much foreground. I think this image would have worked really well as a panoramic image, cutting off the bottom part of the image. That would bring more attention to the little people that provide scale. And I don't think the grasses in the foreground, those are very distracting. So I probably would look at cropping it differently, but I'm still going to give it a 10.
Cat's eyes.
For this particular image, I like the concept of it. I think the concept is great, just getting in really close on the eyes. But, you know, when you look at it on the computer, there's still not any detail at all in the black areas. And you know, I think it'd be really nice to show, at least be able to see the kind of the shape of the nose. So, and you might just be able to go back and reprocess to bring out some more shadow detail. You'd still get the impact of the eyes, but I think it would be nice to see that. I'd also probably bring my composition down if you try and do this again, so that you can see the bottom of the nose and maybe just cut a little bit off the top. but I like the concept. I like the color of the eyes. I might brighten the right eye a little bit more so it balances a little better, but you're on the right track. I'll give this one a 7.
The fabric of my culture.
Great. So people are always a lot of fun to photograph too, and this obviously was some action. You did a really good job of picking your shutter speed to freeze the action. You know, I like the expression, the color is great. So a lot of really nice things going on in the image. The background is blurred out enough that it's not too busy. I mean, in an image like this, you really want the background to be as blurred out as possible so that it doesn't distract from the person. I probably compositionally would have done it as a vertical rather than a square, because again, I mean, the subject is really her face and everything else should be trying to bring us up to her face. And I think we have way too much behind her that we don't need, that kind of pulls my eye away to the left. So I think you could just turn it into a vertical, crop off a major section on the back and it would be stronger. But I'll give it a 9.
York Minster Kaleidoscope.
All right. Well, this is very nice abstract image, and it doesn't. At least on my monitor for Zoom, it's just not doing it justice. When I looked at it on the computer, it's really quite vibrant, has nice contrast and color, and it's very symmetrical. It's really an excellent image. It looked very sharp as far as I can tell. So I'm going to give this one a 10.
Sunrise at Blue Rock.
So this image is doing some things really well in terms of using color to draw you in to the image itself. So having that yellow house, you know, and I can tell you're trying to use the rocks to kind of lead you back to the house. I do think that there's probably really too much foreground here, because the subject to me really would be that house in the back. And I kind of get lost in so much foreground. But if you could come in a little closer, maybe get a little lower, maybe make the house a little bigger in the background, I think all of that would help. So just, you know, keep working on those kind of concepts. But you know, I like the way you're trying to lead the viewer into the image. I'll give this one a 7. And it did look sharp all the way through, which was really good. So
What would Woody say?
and great titles too. The titles are always fun, and that can really make a difference, especially when you're doing an exhibit or something. It's fun for people to read the titles. So in this image, I mean, the piece of wood is really interesting. The image does have a lot of technical problems with it. It's not sharp. We have a very busy background, and you know, in a situation like this, you could even take a black cloth with you and put it behind the piece of wood so that you eliminate any distractions in the background. So think about, you know, ways to make the background better when you have control of the environment. I also probably would have focused in maybe in a tighter area to do more of an abstract image. So, you know, this one, I think you need to go back and keep playing with it. It's a great subject to work with, to experiment and learn your depth of field, and you know, keep improving. But it does need quite a bit of work. So I'm going to give this one a 6.
Blue-eyed pelican.
Pelicans are a great subject. They're one of my favorite birds. I like pelicans a lot. In this particular image, I mean, I really like the eye is sharp. You know, the right side of the image is great. We have way too much room on the left, because again, we want, you know, what we want the pelican to be our subject, but really in this image, it's the eye of the pelican that's the subject. So you could really improve this image a lot just by cropping. And I would crop rather dramatically. I'd leave just enough room on the left that you can see some of the background, because it's very nicely blurred out. But I would just come, and we don't need as much beak on the bottom. So I would really just zoom right in on that eye. And I'd also probably increase the color saturation a little bit. I think that would make it pop more. But a lot of nice things going for this. I'm going to give it an 8.
Sunset Kauai.
Hawaii is a beautiful, beautiful place to go. It's always fun to photograph the ocean. You know, and when I zoomed in on this image, it does have some technical issues. So, I think that I don't know if it was cropped, but it did look kind of noisy. So, working on our settings to make sure our ISO isn't too high, and really trying to deal with the technical aspect would be helpful. I mean, it's a pretty scene, but it doesn't have a real clear subject. I mean, it's the ocean, but it would have been nice to, again, find either a rock that would be more of the subject, or zoom in more on the wave and make the wave the subject and let everything else complement that. So, I'm going to give it a 6, but just really think about looking for what that subject is.
Frosty bison.
So this is a very moody image, which is great. And it's a good illustration of, you can go out on days that aren't perfect weather and get some really nice imagery. I mean, the bison are great with all of the frost. I like the mood of it. I think that you probably could have left a little more foreground. Again, when we have an animal, we want to give it enough room that there's room below it to be comfortable. You don't want to cut legs off or anything, which you're not, but we're just a little tight on the bottom, and we have a lot of room that we could have eliminated on the top. I also, I like the idea of the trees in the background, but they're just sort of poking in a little bit. So I'd either take them completely out and move my angle so I just get a smooth background, or I think I'd make the trees a bigger part of my composition in the background. But it looked pretty sharp. And you do have some bison merging into each other. It's hard to control that, but you've got the one that's off to the right that's isolated. So that makes it really nice for the group. So I'm going to give this one an 8.
Denver at dusk.
All right, some more architecture, which is, the challenge with architecture is really either making sure your lines are straight or exaggerating it to the extent that it was not straight on purpose. And again, I measured this and the lines are very straight. So you did a really good job with your perspective control. I like the color of the image, although I will say the clouds look oversaturated to me, even on my monitor. So you've got to be a little bit careful about that, but the reflection in the building is very nice. I don't particularly like the way the trails are to the top left. I mean, that's an environmental condition that's hard to control. But sometimes if you just wait a while, those will soften out. So that kind of just cuts lines across the left part of the image. But, it looks sharp. There's a lot of promise to it. I'm going to give it an 8.
Poolside view.
So this again is a interesting architectural image because it's got a person in it. It's got some other elements. I would say to me in this image, the pool is really more of the subject, and the building is sort of supporting that. And so if I'm looking at it from that perspective, I think there's really too much building on the right-hand side. I would have cropped the image again. You could go to a more vertical or maybe 8x10 sort of crop on this image. And I think the person is nice. It would have been nice if you had control and could talk to the person, if we could have the person swimming underwater so we could see the whole person. I think that would have made it more interesting. But, it looks sharp and it's an interesting concept. I'm going to give it a 7.
Slowing down.
So this is a really good example of using leading lines. The lines and the trees, lead you right into the picture. It gives the picture a good sense of depth. All of that's working well. The people that are used in the image help give the image scale. So all of that's, working really well. It's nice, diffuse, soft light, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think for a scene like this, you would be better off with the kind of light you have than strong daylight. So, the time of day that you chose and the date that you chose to go out was perfect for this kind of an image. I don't think it's really impactful, but it's decent quality, so I'm going to give it an 8.
Green egret.
All right. So wildlife, which is obviously, I think, my favorite subject in photography. And a lot of nice things going on here. I mean, you're nice and tight into the egret. The eye is really well lit. The body is really well lit. It's looking off. You've given it plenty of space. I like actually the square crop. I think that's working really well. I do think the background's a little bit busy in the image, and I know that's often hard to control. Sometimes if you can move right or left a little bit, you can get a little bit better background. If you're allowed to, I think you're allowed to use Photoshop in here. You can often blur out the background a little bit more to soften it. But again, just remember, busy backgrounds always are going to pull our eye away from the subject. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 7.
Deer hunters.
So this particular image, I like the fact that you chose black and white. I think that was an excellent choice. It really, there's a nice contrast between the people and the animal in the window and the text that's on the window as well. So that's all working well. Now, when I did look at this on the computer, the highlights, especially in the fur, are blowing out. So we have to be really careful when we're processing an image like this to make sure we have white with detail. It doesn't bother me at all that we have black with no detail, you know, in the windows, because that would be very distracting. This works really well to have them looking directly, you know, just at the animal that's in the window. But we do need to work on the processing so we get detail in our whites. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 7, but it's a nice composition and there's some really nice things about it.
Abbey corridor.
So this is another nice image that leads us into the frame, gives us a good sense of depth. Now, from an architectural standpoint, the lines are not straight. You can certainly see that very well on the left side where it's sort of leaning in. And you know, nowadays in Photoshop, if you don't have a perspective control lens that you can use on site, you can do the line corrections in Photoshop. So I would just go back and really straighten out your lines, because I really like the image overall. I think it's great in black and white. I like how you go in. I like how you have the dark door at the end. I think that works really well. So it's a great image. It just needs to be corrected. So I'm going to give it a 9.
What's her name?
Again, a great title and great expression on the kid. I think that's wonderful. You know, with people, the expressions often can really make or break a photograph. So I think that's very important. Now, for this image, if I were going to do it again, or I were looking at it again, I really think that the interesting interaction is really the animal and the girl. And because we have, you know, all this empty space in the center above the animal, that does sort of pull my eye away. So I would have liked to have stepped to the left a little bit more and maybe put the camel in the foreground with the girl above it. So I'm really focused in. So I'm kind of using the animal to lead into the girl's face. And I think that would have helped the image a lot. But the nice soft light, the even light works very well. And you know, I think it's just a question of moving around a little bit more. You know, make sure you when you have a scene like this, take it from many different angles, and that'll help you learn as well. So I'm going to give this one a 7.
Mainsail, where the sea meets the soul.
You guys are really good at titles. It's great. So the cropping on this, I think, was a really excellent choice. I like the longer panoramic format. I think it's perfect. You've got a good balance. You're not quite rule the thirds with the sky, but I think you did a good job of balancing the right amount of foreground ocean with the sky. And there's some interesting clouds. So all of those choices were good. I might have left a little more room to the right of the boats because that's starting to get crowded, but it's still acceptable. Again, you know, probably and in this scene, I would like to see it at another time of day, maybe, you know, earlier or later, whichever light would be better. I think that would make it stronger. But, you know, I mean, the composition's nice, the subject's nice. And, you know, it looks sharp enough. So I'm going to give it a 7.
Roxborough Autumn, and Bob, after this, we'll pop back and look at the 9s and 10s that we've had so far.
Fall color always, you know, helps an image. And I like the sprinkling of the color you have in this image mixed in with the green. I think that works very nicely. You know, the lighting is nice too, although you probably could bring up your shadow detail maybe just a little bit more. We don't have a real strong subject here though. And so it, you know, makes a nice pattern, but I'd like to see something that's a little more of a defined subject in this image. So, you know, I don't know if you could find a tree that could be a subject and let the rest of the scene support that, or a rock. So, you know, just again, really thinking about what, you know, how am I directing the viewer? What do I want them to look at? And what is my subject? And you do have the little rock that's sticking into the lower left-hand corner. So that's a little distracting for me, which I know is getting nitpicky, but I probably would just Photoshop that out. And just, if you're going to go with kind of a pattern, let it, you know, let it be smoother in that left corner. But, you know, the color's nice, but I'm going to give it a 7.
All right, so our first one here, London Olympics Aquatic Center. This is from Dan Greenberg.
Thanks very much for all your comments and stuff like that. And I'm glad you noticed the straight lines, because I'm like one of those people that's kind of anal about that. This is a building, obviously it's in London. I did quite a bit of work of taking things out because there was like bike racks and some other stuff, you know, all laying around here, which otherwise marred a really cool looking building. And so I just liked it because of the fact that all the clouds were reflecting off the window. And this is the part where they had all the all the water events for the London Olympics. So that's what this is. Anyway, thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate them.
Thank you, Dan. The storms are coming, better get moving. It's from Todd Lytle.
Thanks, Cheryl. That's my image. August 2023, I spent about 9 days down in the sand dunes. Bill Williams took my other 5 days since I had a 2-week reservation. So he got to spend time with his family and grandkids. But this was right after he left, so should have stayed. I typically walk out of that. If you're familiar with the area, I come out of the parking lot. I never go straight up the dunes. There's just too many bodies for me. But I always like to walk down Mandano Creek. You can walk down at a good mile and a half, and then you start to look back. And this storm came in, and I was there again the next day, and the next day I got really wet. These storms come in the afternoon. I forgot it was 4:30 in the afternoon. But yes, Cheryl, thank you for finding. There really were 2 people there. That dot on that second ridge down on the right are two people having a conversation. So if you didn't see them, I thought the title was still appropriate. Storms are coming, better get moving. But it was meant to refer to their. I've been out there in lightning storms, and people are still trying to get to the top. It's not really smart. And I didn't know whether or not to include foreground grasses or not. I was just going with kind of a foreground, middle ground, background approach. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. And The Fabric of My Culture is from Cecilia Zapata.
Thank you, Cheryl. So this is the City of Aurora Global Fest. And I agree, it is a beautiful shot, like horizontal. Except there was a bunch of selfie sticks and cameras and, you know, all of that I had to cut so much out of it. by the time I did start messing around in Lightroom and removing it, I was like, this is gonna be an AI picture by the time, the time I'm done if I keep at this. So I decided to crop it in.
Well, and I would just crop it more, just take some off the left.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Do you see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yes.
Just take
Yes.
stuff behind your head, we don't need so much on the left-hand side of the image.
Okay.
Just make, yeah. Just crop in more so that, so we're really drawing the eye to the face.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I find that people don't crop enough. I mean, a lot of people, when they're having me look at trips and things, you know, they'll crop it, I'll say, no, more. And, you know, our sensors are so good nowadays, we can do that. So don't be afraid to crop.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cecilia. This York-Minster kaleidoscope, this is from Jim Cavello.
That's mine. Yeah, like a day after I turned this in, I found out that York-Minster was 2 words, not 1 word. I just assumed it was like Westminster, you know, and that was why I was wrong. I was pointed out by one of my English friends that I was wrong. Anyway, this, I didn't actually do very much to this. It was a little bit of a pain to take a picture straight up, but screens that move make that so much easier. So I just tweaked the perspective a very little bit. It was pretty much spot on. I took about 2 or 3, and this was the best one as a starting. So I didn't really do too much to it. And I didn't really actually have to brighten the middle up. I did brighten the middle a little bit, but it was kind of just sort of lit and it just sort of glowed. So it's really pretty nice.
Beautiful.
And it's much more vibrant when we see it on the big screen here in the room. It's much more vibrant than when we're looking at Zoom, just so you know, it really does pop.
Yeah, it was really pretty spectacular. It's a great place for Minster to get a chance to go.
Excellent work, Jim.
Thank you.
And Abbey Corridor, this is from Susan Hafke. Susan travels a lot and doesn't always join us, but she does submit pretty regularly. She noted that this was taken at the Melk Abbey in Austria and converted to black and white in Nick software. And there we go. So this is Beautiful Evening in Berlin.
So again, I think the choice of composition on this is very nice. It's kind of leading into the main building. I like the time of day. There is good detail in the areas that are lit. I still would probably go in and reprocess this and try and bring out the shadows more. Now, if I were doing an image like this, I would probably do it as an HDR. For those of you who are more advanced, you'll know what that is. But I think it allows you to expand the dynamic range of the image. And I think HDR would have worked really well for this, but you could probably go in and open the shadows up a little bit better. But it's sharp, it's a nice composition. I like the color in the clouds. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Into a deep dive.
So, nice, sharp whale tail. It was very sharp when I looked at it on the computer. The mountains give you a good sense of where it is. There are some interesting, and again, I don't have the highest res files even to look at on my computer, so I'm not quite sure what's going on, but there are some strange artifacts in the back in the mountains that you can't really see that well on the screen. So, go back in and take a look, and I don't know if you did something in processing, but there are definitely some strange lines and things that are happening in the mountains. And I think it's appropriate that they're, out of focus because you really do want to just see the whale tail. I would have liked to have seen it maybe not merging into the mountains so much. If you could have, and I know it's hard because you're probably in a boat, but if you could have gotten a little bit higher, maybe stood up so that you could see the edge of the shoreline and then the tail in the water, I think that might have been a little bit nicer, but it's still a nice image. I'm going to give it an 8.
On top of Maui.
So nice vantage point to watch the clouds coming in. And I think that the kind of atmosphere that you have going on with the clouds coming in is nice. But again, what's the subject? And to me, it would be more of just, how the clouds are starting to to seep into these valleys. And so in that instance, I think we again have way too much foreground. So I probably would crop in a little bit more. And I'd also, again, this is another image where I'd really like to see it with more extreme light, either, you know, early or late, whichever would be the better light, to really add some more drama to it. But it's sharp. You know, it's not particularly strong, but technically, you know, there are a lot of technical elements that are handled well. So I'm going to give it an 8.
Going around the bend.
And I love the fact that a lot of you are doing some black and white imagery too. I mean, color is wonderful, but a lot of times for subjects like this, you know, color really doesn't help you. So going to black and white really shows off the metal and the shapes. And so I think that was a really excellent choice in this image. I like the kind of curve of the line. I like the, you know, kind of the reflection in the water. I think it's, you know, it's an interesting image. I think it could maybe have a little bit more impact. I feel like the right side of it is blocking a little bit, so I probably just would have gone a little more abstract with the shapes, but I'll give it an 8.
Indian summer, crescent moon.
So the color in the sky of this image is nice, and it doesn't pop really well. I think it popped a little bit better on my screen at home. So, you know, I like the fact that you've got the mountain range and the color and those shapes. The moon, however, it really does kind of look fake the way it's pasted in. So, and part of that is just your technique of sandwiching the images. And you really, when you have, I mean, you have to think about if you had that kind of cloud cover, the moon wouldn't be so visible, right? It would be behind the clouds. So if you're going to try and paste a moon into the image, make sure you pick a section where you have some open sky, where it would be normal for the cloud to appear. Because if you had clouds like this, the moon wouldn't be kind of pasted on top. So just think about that. And I think, you know, the shape of the mountains and the color's nice on its own. So I'm not even sure you really need the moon, but I'm going to give this one a 7.
Evening splendor.
Flowers are a great subject as well, and they're very challenging because you've got a lot of issues to deal with, like depth of field, and the background again. I like the feel of the image. I like the kind of the limited depth of field and the blurred out flowers in the background, but it's just, there's a lot of contrast, and I don't think it's really having the impact that it looks almost washed out too. I don't have a really nice black tone when I looked at it on the computer that really contrasts well with the white, and some of the detail looked like it was blowing out in the white areas. So it does need some work. I would probably maybe zoom in even a little bit closer. You know, I think again, we maybe have too many flowers to really feel like we're focused in on one subject area. So just, you know, when you have a subject like this, just try different compositions and zoom way in. I would say get closer. I'm going to give this one a 6.
Life has been good to me.
So portraits are, you know, a really wonderful way to share a place when you're going somewhere and you have really interesting people like this. And I think converting it again to black and white was a great choice. It really draws you in. I don't know what the color of the clothes were, but I think the background might have been really distracting if you had let it remain in color. So I don't particularly like having such a bright white element behind the subject. So again, when you're looking at images like this, really think about your background too. Your composition's great on the face, the angle of the head is nice, the angle of the shoulders is very nice, but anything that's white in our background is going to draw our eye away. So if you could have just moved over a little bit to get a darker background, that would have helped a lot. It's not also, when I did zoom in on this image, it didn't look as sharp as it should be either. So there's some technical issues, but compositionally and expression wise and black and white, that's all working really, really well. I'm going to give it a 7.
York Minster East Wing.
So again, we've got architecture where this is one of those images where I was saying, you know, either keep the line straight or make it really obvious that you're not worried about the perspective. And I think this is just caught kind of in between. So I like, you know, I like the shapes that you have going, but you know, it's just, it either needs to be more exaggerated where you get lower and shoot up so everything is, you know, purposefully merging into the top, or you know, back up and try and straighten your lines, I think. So the more abstract image that we saw of the church earlier looking up, I probably would have gone more with an approach like that on this. Or just also just, you know, you could do a very nice abstract image of the patterns in just the glass. So you don't always have to show the whole room. So there are lots of images within this that I think could have worked better, but it did look sharp and the colors are nice. I'm going to give it a 7.
Thunder Bay.
So I really like the contrast of colors in the image with the blues and the kind of yellow green that's leading us into the image. It's cropped a little bit too tight, I think, on the left. Again, when you have a shape like that, you want to make sure you leave enough room so that we see the entire edge and we're not feeling crowded. The other thing I might have done to improve this image is put on a neutral density filter and slow the water down, make the water really milky smooth. You know, there's texture in the water, but I think it would have been fun to experiment with really just letting the water smooth out so that we would see the texture in the rocks, but not in the water. I'd also, the light's not terrible, but I'd like to see it at different times of the day too. So it's good, but I think it could be even better, with you know, some of those creative changes. So I'm going to give it an 8.
Black on White.
So whenever we're photographing, you know, a subject like this or wildlife, and you're trying to show the most of the creature, it's either better to include the whole insect or really crop in tight. So I think, you know, I really like the black background. I mean, there's nothing to distract us. The shapes are great, but we either need to show the whole butterfly, or you could, the other alternative would be you could really crop in tight and just go for the, you know, the head part and the legs that are on the leaf and make it really tight. So if you don't have any more image area, I probably would just crop more on this. I do find that upper leaf that's coming in at the top distracting. I'd rather have that taken out of the image. If you sort of block it, you can see how much cleaner it is. But the contrast between the butterfly, the whites and the blacks are really nice. And it really pops from the background. So your eye has nowhere else to go but the subject. There are some technical problems with it though, because we do not, the wing is not sharp all the way through, which is very challenging. So, you know, you really have to work when you're working with macro type subjects. You have a very, very narrow depth of field. So you really have to make sure your sensor is parallel to your subject so that you can take advantage of the sharpness of that narrow depth of field. But so there are some technical problems, but a lot of nice things going for it as well. I'm going to give it a 7.
Leaves at Sunset.
So I love the texture of the leaves in this. The texture is really wonderful. And even kind of the muted colors of the leaves is nice. But what I would say again is cropping in, I think, would have helped this image a lot, because if you look at the background around the leaves, it's just, there's really not much going on there. It's very distracting. If you crop into, you know, maybe just pick that top middle leaf and just kind of use that as your subject and crop way into the image, I think that would be much stronger. And then you see the lines of the leaf and the subtle colors. So I would go back and just play with some cropping on this. And I think you'll see a big improvement. So I'm going to give it a 7. It did look nice and sharp though on the computer.
Leaving Maryland.
So good choice again with the black and white. I think that's working well. There was good detail in the whites here. So all of that's handled nicely. I like the interaction of the person looking back at the image of Marilyn Monroe, but again, you know, we really need to see the whole person, I think, in this situation. So if you could have moved back or zoomed out a little bit, I think that would have helped the image a lot. But it did look sharp, and the contrast is good. So you're doing a lot of good things there. So again, just really think about that positioning. And making sure that you're cropping in appropriate places. So I'm going to give this a 7.
Cutting the sky.
So another sort of architectural abstract image, which is fun. Again, I think the black and white was a very good choice. I like the texture and the shadows contrasting with the clouds. All of that's working really well. I almost would have cropped the bottom. I don't know what this is going across the bottom, but I think I would have just cropped that out. There's just a little bit in the image, so it's not really helping us. And I think if you just kind of block that off and just look at the jagged shapes in the sky, it would have been much stronger. But I do really like the impact of this and the diagonals. It's working very well. I'm going to give it a 9.
Cormorant on the move.
In this image, you did a really good job of your timing and placing the bird so it has plenty of room to fly in front. So all of that's working really well. I like how the wing is just, you know, sort of almost touching the water. The positioning of that's really nice. However, we do have a lot of lighting issues here, and when I did zoom in, it's not very sharp. So this is just, you know, just and I'm assuming you must have blown out the background on purpose to the white, but I think it's just too much. It's overpowering the cormorant. So, you know, you could go back in and process the image and see if there's any detail in the water that might make it stronger, but it needs quite a bit of work, I think, to, you know, to really improve the technicals. So just practice again, but your timing is good. So I think if you just, you know, keep working at it, you're going to do really well. But be careful when you have black against white, because your eye is always going to go to the lightest part of the image. So where you have a black bird, but then you've chosen to make your background white, it just pulls your eye away from the subject. So I'm going to give this one a 6.
Tree Amigos.
Another great name. Really great name. You know, and whenever you're working with things that have odd numbers, they're very pleasing in composition. So that was a good choice to choose 3 trees. I don't know if there were others around, but I think that works very well. I like the kind of soft tones of this image. I think it's working, you know, really nicely. And when I looked at it on the computer, it was very pleasing. That's all working really well. You've got good contrast in the image. It's kind of a soft, subtle kind of contrast. You are crowding, I think, a little bit at the top. So I might have, if I had to take off, I might have taken off a little bit more at the bottom and given a little more room at the top. It's a nice image. It's sharp. I don't think it has the impact quite of a 10, but I'll give it a 9.
Reflecting.
So I like the way you were trying to use these plants that are outside the windows to sort of frame, again, the subject. I would say would be the woman in the window. So identify that subject. But when I look at this image, you know, all of the other elements, like the whole window frame, we've got a lot of white in the window frame, especially the white at the top, and the reflections at the top right of the window that are white, that are pulling my eye away from the subject. So, you know, if you could just come down, again, this could just be with cropping. If you just come down and crop so that the woman's at the left of the image, and you still use the plant to frame her, and you get rid of all of those distracting white elements, I think you can sort of see how you know, it's a much stronger image that way. So really, again, really think about, you know, what's my subject and does everything else support it? And if it does not support the subject, get rid of it, crop it out, you know, move around, really consider those things. So I'm going to give this a 7.
Donuts on a down slope.
I like the use of black and white again. I think that's, you know, that's a nice choice for the image. There's good contrast in the image. I think you did a good job of handling that. You know, it's a fun scene. I think, you know, compositionally, I kind of don't like all the horizontal lines that we have going through the bottom. I don't know if there was a way to minimize those more. A lot of times if I'm doing something like this, I would even lie on the ground so that I have lines going through the back of things, so I get the sign more against the sky. I think if both signs could be more against the sky, that might be more impactful. But it was sharp. I like the black and white. I'll give it an 8.
Nostalgia.
So great name again for this image. I think the image gives you, it does give you kind of a nice sense of Christmas, and you get a nice feel to it. I even like the difference in the lighting with, you know, it almost looks like a, you know, a historical photo in the background, and then you've got the card that you're holding up. So you know, I like the feel of that. The lighting on the hand is a little too bright, I think. I would have maybe burned that down a little bit, because again, you really just want people to zoom in on the picture and have the tree in the background supporting the card that you're holding up. So you could even maybe crop in a little bit more. I'm not sure you need quite as much hand. If you just got the fingers and cropped in tighter, I think that would be stronger. I might even just go with a horizontal image. So I just get a little bit of the tree with the card in the background. But you know, it's an interesting approach to the image. I'll give it a 7.
A canoe's view of our island treehouse.
That looks like a really nice place. So, you know, really nice reflections in this image. I think, you know, that was a really good choice. But again, this is, I think, a really good example of going out at the best time of day. And if you look at you know, the cabins and things, which are really our subject, they're all in shadow. So we really want to go back to this location when we have light hitting the cabins. And I would probably just focus on the triangular one on the right and do a vertical image of that with the trees reflecting in the water. Because again, I think all of the stuff on the left just pulls our eye away from what would be a really nice subject. So time of day, go back, just concentrate on that one little section of the image. And I think it would end up being a really strong, beautiful image. I'm going to give it a 7. It was sharp though, so that's good too.
This is
all right. So I think spotty light like this works really well with mountains, especially when you're not shooting, you know, at sunrise or sunset or something. I think having the modeling on the mountain range really helps a lot to make an image stronger. If this were just sunlight on the entire mountain, it would not be nearly as interesting as it is with the modeled light. So that, you know, that was a really good choice. I think I would have liked to have actually in this scene a little bit more foreground, because you've got some really nice color toward the bottom of the image. So, you know, we're almost cropping that, and I think it would have helped to support the mountain. I think it would have been nice to show, I don't know what you had below it. You may have had a road or something and you had to crop there, but if you could leave some more color at the bottom, I think that would have been nice. But overall, it's a nice image. I'll give it a 9.
Mongolian cooking tools.
So black and white again was a really good choice for this image. I like the diagonal. That was a good choice to bring in the slotted spoon from a diagonal. It's a very simple image, but it tells a story. and it's handled well. So I'm going to give it a 9.
All right, this is one of our critique-only images, which I mentioned to you, Cheryl, when we had our phone call.
Yes.
We got 3 images that our members submitted. We allow our members or guests to submit an image for critique only. So do the same thing that you've been doing all evening, including giving it a score. But you know, these don't count for their totals for the year. That's the only thing.
Okay.
This is
Sure.
just basically it's a what does the judge think of this image kind of thing.
Sure.
This is called Sunrise Cast.
Great. All right. Well, so I like that you let some motion in the water, and it's great if you, especially if you have somebody that you can talk to say, hey, stand really still so I can slow down my shutter speed. I think that gives a nice sense to it. I might have even exaggerated that more if you could have. If you were talking to the fisherman, I would have slowed my shutter speed down even more and just let that water kind of wipe across. I like the fact that the fisherman's almost silhouetted. I think that's nice. There's good placement of the fisherman in the image. There's not a real strong color to the sky. It would have been nice to go back and redo this image with more color in the sky, because I think that would make it pop. So those are some of the suggestions I would make to improve it. But you're on the right track, and your sense of composition, I think, is good. So I would just keep trying this in different sunset scenarios and see if you can get a little more color or impact. So if I were scoring it, I would probably give it a 7.
Window on Bratislava.
This is a really interesting image in terms of the way, you know, you've got all these different colors of glass, and you can see through the glass. You can see, you know, the people and the benches and the architecture. So I do like that. I think it makes a very nice abstract image. However, again, I think, you know, we're looking at a subject where it either needs to be straight, so I would have squared up and made sure that all my lines were straight and it was very symmetrical, or I would have really exaggerated the angles, because, you know, when you look at it this way, it doesn't look like it's very purposeful in the way it's composed. And I think there's a lot of promise to this. So if you see this sort of scenario again, really think in terms of, am I going to make everything straight and symmetrical, or am I really going to exaggerate? So really get low and make the lines, you know, diverge or converge, whichever way you're going, up or down, and really exaggerate the lines, or get at a strong diagonal or something. So, but you know, I like the different colors, and I like the concept of it. So I probably would have given this a 7 as well.
Fan wind.
This image, again, I think works really well in black and white. I mean, I doubt there was a lot of color in this image anyway. So I think it works really well as black and white, and there's nice texture. I like the patterns and the texture of the wall. I think the way the lighting is, that's, you know, emphasized nicely. You could have tried something like, you know, think about when you're doing black and white like this and you have a subject like this, you could also think about like turning on the light in the middle and just letting that be color and let the rest of the image be black and white. I think that might add some interest to it, because it's not the most exciting subject. I'd probably also, if I were doing this again, or even, I mean, you could probably just even do it with what you have here. I would probably cut out the whole bottom and just let it be a horizontal. So cut the entire bottom half, get rid of the wall lines, and just go with the shapes of the shadows on the top. But it's nice and sharp, and I love the texture in it. So I'd probably give it an 8 if I were scoring it. But do you see how cropping that bottom part out and just letting it be more abstract with the texture and the lighting shadows?
It's a good possibility, yes.
Mm.
All right, we do have a couple of 9s and 10s to go talk to the makers about. Cutting the Sky, the black and white, that one right there. There we go. This is from Mark Rockkind.
Well, this was envisioned as black and white from the get-go, the part of this curvy thing at the bottom was bright red. And there's another reason why it had to be black and white conversion if it was going to be in the shot. I worked hard to make the tone of that the same as the sky so that the sharp objects would be framed. But your suggestion that I crop out the bottom is very interesting, and there are plenty of these objects here. Be plenty of these objects left if I did that. So I'm going to go try that and see what it looks like. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Tree Amigos is from Terry Hanford. I didn't see Terry on Zoom. He's usually here, but may have had another commitment. And unfortunately, Terry didn't leave any notes about this. I mean, I personally feel that Terry is one of those guys that always comes up with just the right kind of title for it that really, really piques your interest. Wilson Peak. This is from Bill Rothenmeier. And apparently Bill is not here this evening. And unfortunately, I don't have any notes, but I think most of us know where Wilson Peak is, so just have to get there on the right day when the light is right. And then our final one, Mongolian Cooking Tools, is from Oz Fenninger. If I remember right, Oz was not in the room this evening?
No.
Okay. He did say that we were visiting a family living in the Gur, like a yurt, in northern central Mongolia. Oz and his wife just took a trip there recently. They demonstrated how to make cheese from yak milk. I noticed these washed tools in a container, and I was drawn to the circles within the stainless steel pieces and thought it would make an interesting black and white image. Cropped image was enhanced using Photoshop, Nik software, and Topaz for sharpening and denoise. Excellent result.
Carl, I forgot to say that my image was the Los Angeles County Museum of Art.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Very nice. And you did make the right choice on going black and white with that. Like you said, with the red thing at the bottom, that would be kind of distracting. Okay, well, those are all the images for this evening. Cheryl, do you have any final words of wisdom for the collective group after all these images?
No, I think
Everybody's really on the right track and doing a great job. I mean, just again, really think about what your subject is and not including things in the image that don't need to be there. So, but I think there's a lot of really nice work and a lot of images that with just little tweaks would be a lot stronger. So,
Right.
Keep working it. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, just a comment that you said more than once
Mhm.
that you would have liked to see the cropping closer.
Mhm.
I mean, and so I think that to me is the takeaway from tonight. And in my own mind, I've resolved that if you're ever the judge for us again, I promise that on my images, you will say that they're cropped too tightly.
Well, I mean, you don't always have to crop tightly, but I think just, in particular tonight, there were a lot that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, Cheryl, that, cropping to eliminate the distractions is the
Yeah,
important.
exactly.
What things in the composition don't add to it, don't add to the subject itself, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you don't have to use the ratio that your sensor is.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what I see a lot.
Yeah.
Instead of cropping to the subject, they're just using the whole sensor size, no matter what it is.
Right.
So look at your subject and decide what around it needs to be in it and what shape you want that to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, this is to me the real reason why you want a high resolution sensor, because it gives you these options.
Right, and high resolution is relative, for me, I've got a 24 megapixel Fuji, and that gives me plenty of pixels to play with, especially when we're, showing images at a max of 2560. And that's something I want to touch on too. A number of images that were submitted for this competition were smaller than our standard image size. Some of them were as low as 1,000 pixels. So I want to encourage everybody, because I noticed that about 90% of the people who submit images use Lightroom. We have on our website 2 different places, 2 different pages. One of them, the digital submission page, and the other one, the competition rules page. A little zip file that has an export preset and a PDF instruction sheet about it. And when you use that, your images will be the max 2560 wide, the max 1440 tall that we allow in our competitions. And I think some of the images would have shown better if they were more pixels. Now, maybe some people had to crop a lot in order to get that exact image, and that's why it was only, maybe 1,000 pixels or 1,600 or 1,200 or whatever it may be. But do be aware of that you're throwing in say a 1,200, 1,600 pixel image that's going to be shown next to one that's 2560. So there's going to be a visual difference between those. But if you haven't already, go and grab those Lightroom presets, get them set up, and it'll simplify your life for submitting images for our competitions. Does anybody have any final questions or commentary or anything before we all get out of here?
Here, just let me get you back
Okay, hold
on.
on, I was gonna make one more comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was gonna make one more comment about that too. If, keep in mind, if you're gonna crop an image a lot, you can use programs like Topaz Gigapixel to up-res the image. So, and it does an amazing job. So if you do need to increase the resolution of the image, don't be afraid to try that program. It's excellent. So.
Very good.
And actually for the judging, I wouldn't even, and I know you're trying to do screen resolutions too, but it might not even be bad to do a high resolution file that you could send to the judges. Because it is, and I didn't check the resolution on every single file, but even the files that are higher res, the higher resolution file I have to look at, the better I can judge it, really for the details.
Sure.
So, just a thought. I know it's hard to get people to size 2 different images, but it's nice. That's why a lot of competitions that are giving prizes, they ask for the raw file or the full res image to do the final judging, because it's really hard to judge it when you're, downsampling.
JPEG.
Yeah.
Well, if we were giving away $1,000 per competition, we'd probably do that. But mostly it's for pride and glory.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, no, it was great. It was great to see all the images.
Yes. Yes. Again, thank everybody for participating in the competition, for showing up here this evening, and we appreciate you all. Thanks to the guests who came, and we will probably be in touch with you in the near future, and maybe try and recruit you a little bit to get you in the club here. So, all right. If there's nothing else, then I think we just wave goodbye now.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thanks all.
everybody.